Greens all, been here from East West. I'm just going to take a look at energy fuels specifically here in this video. Obviously, probably a lot of people looking for answers. I don't have the actual answers as to why it got hammered so hard this week. Obviously, it was a heavy week in the market in general, and the energy markets were obviously hit pretty hard. I don't know why energy fuels was the stock that got sold off the hardest. I'll leave someone else to dig into the reasons for that. I'm just here to present a technical picture as best I can work out. So I'm just out here on a weekly. The first thing I'll start with is a volume profile. So I've just taken a volume profile here from the COVID low all the way up until this week. Now the first thing I would look at here is we've got this low volume area here that the market's approaching, and as we drag that across, we can see that we've got an obvious area of interest through here where I wouldn't say it's so much involved with this, but certainly on the way back down, I think what this is showing is that there's unsatisfied demand at this area, because every time the market's got down here, there's definitely been a lack of selling interest, and the buyers have been pretty easily been able to push price back up. So that is sort of the first thing I'm gathering from this. But I think personally, I'll probably be more interested in this area here, the higher volume area. So obviously the buyers and sellers ran into each other here. There was a tussle for a couple of months, and then the buyers won out, and now this has acted as support. So we know that just here, even though there's no volume through here, there was no willing sellers, that there's definitely buyers lurking just at this point, and we didn't get down to test it on this occasion here in July. So the question now remains is, are we going to come down and test it one more time? Now, just staying out here on the weekly, the Bollinger Bands here, you can see how they've contracted in showing that lack of volatility, like compared to how wide they were. You can see here how the lack of volatility has been in price since this low, which is going to feed into our Elliott wave analysis a bit later on. But you can see right now we're at the bottom of the Bollinger Bands. Now, that's not an automatic buy signal. You can see, like, sort of these instances, like if you tried to short it here, you would have got your face ripped off, because the Bollinger Bands are only really showing you the volatility that's existed in the market. So right now, with this drop at this speed, we're at the extremes of the current volatility. That's all that's really saying. It's not necessarily a buy signal, even though you can see here it hit quite nicely. But it is a bit of a warning that just as the market's the pattern of the market has shaped up since July 2022, that we are pretty heavy just on this area right here. Not necessarily guaranteed to bounce, even though I think a short-term one's coming, but certainly on the edge of volatility. In fact, while we're out here on the weekly, I'm just looking at the RSI. I just like when the RSI can travel above 60. To me, it signifies that there's enough momentum in terms of the average up bars that it's dragged it through this 60 level, and we can go up into the hot zones, which just basically means that we're in a bull market. Now, the fact that we're failing at this 60 area and we're not holding 40 means, to me, we're still bearish. So I am expecting that this is going to travel down into this to make a final low before we can start to make our next larger cycle run back up, but I don't think we're there yet. So just looking at these larger weekly cycles, I think this COVID low here was the yearly cycle low. Then we had one cycle here of, I should just turn the moving average on. We had one cycle low here of 33 weeks. Then we had a longer one at 42, and that was balanced out by a shorter one at 23. So, take 10 weeks off this, give 10 weeks to that. You can see roughly we're 33, 33, 33. I wouldn't run to the bank with a 33-week cycle. It just appears that that's what's happening. So now we've had a shorter one at 23 weeks, and even though you could sort of say, well, hey man, these are cycles, like, yeah, well, you could, but then all of a sudden you've got some really short ICLs. I think there's a problem with marking out the cycles when the market's effectively going sideways like this. I'm just going to count this as one long cycle, and week 8 looks to be the peak, which means it's left translated, and in left translated cycles, that means you expect, it's not always the case, but most of the time, and what the expectation is that we're going to fail below this level. Okay, now we've had a 23 week. We're currently in week 35, so just using this rule of thumb, and I stress again, it's a rule of thumb, it's not a guarantee or a prediction, but you would think sort of 40 to 45 weeks, you know, so call it the next 6 to 8 weeks, you'd be looking for this cycle to run its course, make this final ICL somewhere down below this level, and once again, maybe we're just going to come in and test down to here, like that. And that would make our yearly cycle low, like so. And then we can expect the next leg of the rally, which should last for quite a few years. I would think the interesting thing here too is if you take sort of, you know, 20, you would get roughly a 3-year cycle, which is kind of what you're looking for, you know, a 3-year cycle, because there's so many 3-year cycles make up the larger cycle that is more evident in macro, but obviously we're just going to dance, all these stocks dance to the tune of macro in some way, shape or form. So just as we move into the daily, it's been a little bit tricky. I've sort of changed this around a fair bit, and a lot of that owes to the fact that we have got this sideways movement, which sort of, to me, has made large cycles. So I think off this last ICL that we've been talking about that we made in July, I think we've got one cycle here of 82 days, another one here of 81 days, and I think these cycles are longer than what I've observed of the average. And right now we're on day 84, but we are very oversold. So I'm kind of expecting that this will be the next move that we're going to get. I thought maybe this was going to be a cycle low. I'm not so sure now. I had marked it out, but I just think that when you look at those weekly cycles, that this is going together a bit better. But I think what we're going to get is this, that we're going to make the daily cycle low in this daily cycle 3 soon. We're going to get a bit of a relief bounce that will take us through the moving average and the trend line to confirm a cycle, and then we're going to get one more left translated and failed cycle below this level. So we'll make daily cycle 4, okay, and then we'll make the big low, and then I think we can complete all the patterns in both the cycles and the Elliott wave sense that would suggest that the worst's over, the correction's done, and we can start moving on with our lives and hoping for rallies. Just quickly here too, I won't spend too much time on this because I don't know the validity of this, but I've just was searching through looking for short interest, and this script that I found on TradingView, daily short volume, just looks like, obviously we had these earnings, and I think the earnings piled on top of the general market sentiment is definitely not a help situation. But if this script is correct, and I can't vouch for its validity, but I guess it fits, is that certainly on Thursday we had some pretty heavy short selling going on relative to recent price history. So whether or not there's shorts in this market that we'll need to cover, I'm guessing there probably is. But it just looking at the naked eye, if you put this together, just where this recent zone is, and even just on a basic Elliott sense, maybe you could say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and an extension in the 5th. That maybe that's close to finding a bottom, and if there are any shorts in the market, which I suspect there are, they're going to have to cover. So whether or not that just helps us make a little bit of a low, and we just get a little bit of a relief bounce. I don't know how high. I'm not really prepared to project that as yet. I think that's a possibility, but like I said, I'm not sure I can lean too heavily into this. I don't know enough about it. So just finish off here with the Elliott, and few of us in the space have been warning for a while that, and when I say a while, I mean since these sort of areas, especially when we did this, that the corrective pattern had, this was the move up, that we thought potentially at this point that the corrective pattern had finished and that we were going to go on with it. But once we started doing this, that spelt that there was a problem and that the correction wasn't over. because the way the whole thing goes together is that this doesn't look impulsive now. This looks like 3 waves, this looks like 3 waves, and this now looks extremely like a triangle for all intensive purposes. I mean, that kind of just fits the triangle bill. We'll have a look at that very shortly, but it was still difficult to put it together, but this is the best I can come up with at the moment. I was just having trouble just when you look at this. I'll just bring a couple of things up here. This is the quote directly from the book. Triangle appears to reflect the balance of forces causing a sideways movement. We've certainly, I would consider this sideways. It hasn't gone anywhere. That is usually associated with decreasing volume. Now look where the pattern starts, and this blue line is the moving average of the volume. And look at it, it's just tailed off all the way through the pattern until we've had this break of the trend line, which to me, you know, that is what you would expect, a sharp break through the trend line of the triangle. So that's ticking that box. And volatility. Now remember when we looked at the Bollinger Bands that they crushed right in because the volatility has run out of the market because it's doing this. So this really fits the pattern of a triangle. Now I was struggling initially with this because I think this is an A wave, a B wave, and a C wave to make a W. And then to make this X was difficult because the problem is triangles, when you're talking about WXYs, which I initially thought that this was not an A, it was a W, an X, and a Y. The problem is that you can't have a triangle in the middle of a WXY. You can have it as a B wave, and that's why it's just the way that you've got to. I just think this looks undeniably like a triangle, so this for mine has to be a B wave as we come down here to complete. Okay, so what I would expect is we got what I think is a WXY in here, a 3-wave pattern, and then I would just expect that we're going to get another 3 waves come down to finish. I'm not making a projection of. Let me try that again. I think it's my expectation that we get, this is probably 1 wave down, we're going to get a bounce, and then we'll get a 3rd wave down somewhere in here, and that will give us our C, that will give us our X, and then we can think about going up to get the big Y up here. I don't know where that is. I'm not saying it's $15. Once this completes, we'll start making some projections as to where we might expect things to go. But when you tie everything together, remember you've got that volume node, the support down here. I think we're going to, the cycle looks like it's going to tap in. And then in terms of this, A, B, maybe it's the 61.8 that we come down to just tap like that. I don't think we're going down to the 100. I don't think we're going that low. Can't be ruled out, of course. But that's just the way that I think it's going together at the moment, because this just looks very undeniably like a triangle. And if it is a triangle, it's got to be a B wave. It can't be an X wave because triangles in combinations finish patterns. They're not in the middle of a pattern. So that is my best guesstimate in an Elliott sense of where we're at. So the main takeaway, I think, is if you're long, if you're hodling, whatever the case might be, prepare yourself mentally for a trip down here, because that's where I think we're headed. And I think we're trying to come down now, grab this final wave, and this is the first part of it before we make the bottom, and up we go. So that is where we sit with Energy Fuels at the moment. So hope you found that a little bit helpful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.